Is that right?
Good afternoon. Welcome to the San Francisco Board of Supervisors meeting of Tuesday, September the 16th, 2014. Madam Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Yes, Mr. President. Supervisor Avalos. Avalos present. Supervisor Breed. Breed present. Supervisor Campos.
Present.
Campos present. President Chu.
Present.
Chu present. Supervisor Cohen. Cohen present. Supervisor Farrell.
Present.
Farrell present. Supervisor Kim.
Here.
Kim present. Supervisor Marr.
Here.
Marr present. Supervisor Tang.
Present.
Tang present. Supervisor Wiener. Wiener present. Supervisor Yee.
Present.
Yee present. Mr. President, all members are present.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Madam Clerk, do we have any communications?
There are no communications today, Mr. President.
And if you could go to our 2 p.m. special order.
The first item of business is the policy discussion between the Honorable Mayor Edwin Lee and members of the Board of Supervisors, this week representing the even districts, specifically District 10. The Mayor may address the Board initially for up to 5 minutes. The President will recognize the Supervisor, who will present her own question. Follow-up questions are in order as long as the entire discussion does not exceed 5 minutes per Supervisor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Mr. Mayor, welcome back to September's question time. And as is our usual process, would like to ask if you have any initial comments you'd like to make.
Thank you, President Chu. Supervisors, thank you for having me here at the Chambers for question time again. And I hope everyone's had a relaxing and productive summer. Thank you to the audience. And I see in the audience some recent people who just took the oath on our Youth Commission. I want to thank you for being here as well. As we end the summer and head to the fall, we're reminded that our children are back to school and beginning their new academic year. I hope all of you have seen the great news of some major philanthropic gifts to our city's education system. Mr. Mark Benioff and Lynn, but particularly Mark, knows what a good investment is, and he sees one, and that's why he's generously doubled down on his gift to our San Francisco Unified School District and our middle schoolers. His $5 million contribution will enable our students to use technology to further their education and will give principals and teachers more tools they need to successfully train our young people to succeed in the 21st century economy. So I know the board agrees with me that education is a critical piece to keeping families in San Francisco, and investing in our youth is the best investment that we can make. In the last few years, we've made historic investments in our public schools, and we'll continue to work together with our school district and with our school board to make sure that our youth succeed and win those jobs and win in their careers. And equally important is ensuring that the city remains affordable, and everyone should be paying attention to what we're doing with respect to transportation and housing. With that, I want to just signal a thanks to President Chu and Supervisor Farrell, and to those of you today, and hopefully it will be all of you, that will consider a very important lease at 250 Kearny Street. It will be introduced today, and it will provide us with an additional 130 units of housing focused on our chronically homeless veterans on Kearny Street. And that's very important, I think, as a city to all of us to end chronic homelessness. And I join in President Obama's call that every city do what they can. We are very close, Supervisors, to ending chronic homelessness, and we're probably a project away. And in the near future, I'll join you to announce that project as well, and we can be one of the few cities on the map across the U.S. to say that we're ending chronic homelessness and on to the larger challenge of homelessness in general. Housing affordability is obviously a big cornerstone of my agenda as mayor, and I know a priority for all of you on the board as well. Our ambitious 30,000 units of housing, and 50% of that affordable to low and middle income residents, truly sets us on our way. I'll stay focused on that, as well as working with you on everything to do with evictions and displacements, which too often force our seniors from their homes and fractures our communities. We will remain and continue to be the city for the 100%, and that's the challenge that we have, and I know we can meet it. With that, on to the question from Supervisor Cohen. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And we have one question provided today by our District 10 colleague, Supervisor Cohen.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for joining us today. My question is, as you know, I've been working on acquiring a property at 66 Raymond Avenue in the Visitation Valley neighborhood to use as an intergenerational space for community programming and services for the community. This acquisition has been complicated due to the nature of the ownership and history of the property. Throughout this process, you've expressed support for this acquisition. What is your vision for this space, and how can you help move this acquisition forward? Thank you.
Well, thank you, Supervisor Cohen, for this question and for using this month's question time session to raise an important issue in your district. And I appreciate your focus on the needs of the residents in D10. You're right, and I've been a supporter of your plan to acquire and transform 66 Raymond Street. And back when you first proposed this idea, I directed my staff and department heads to tour the site and cooperate with your office on creating a new, valuable resource for the community in Visitation Valley. And Supervisor, you and I have been talking for months about the need to bring this asset back online to benefit the residents of a surrounding neighborhood. And my vision for this space, which I know you share, is literally to replicate the tremendous success that we had with the property right next door at 50 Raymond Street. At 50 Raymond Street, we're working with strong nonprofit partners, our Human Services Agency, our Department of Children, Youth, and Family. They've all built a community hub that provides resources to families in that area of the city. And the building looks nice, the services at 50 Raymond are high quality, and the community realizes that and participates in 50 Raymond tremendously. So our mission now is to replicate the success on the property next door. And it would be appropriate if 66 Raymond, once the city is able to control it, goes through a selection process to select a service provider, perhaps one to serve our city's seniors. And as we encourage aging in place and senior wellness, it's important that we provide San Francisco's elderly and with places to congregate, to socialize, and to exercise. 66 Raymond could be that exact place, a community hub for seniors in the southeast sector corridor of our city, and perhaps we could even combine it with 50 Raymond Street and create one large center servicing people of all ages and all backgrounds. Supervisor Cohen, I know we'll continue to work with you on this important project, and specifically to your request, I did call the owner, and I'm waiting for his response.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And with that, that concludes today's question time.
Thank you.
Colleagues, why don't we now go to our consent agenda? Items 2 and 3. Madam Clerk.
Items 2 and 3 comprise the consent calendar. These items are considered routine. However, an item may be removed and considered separately.
Colleagues, would anyone like to sever either of these items? Roll call.
On items 2 and 3, Supervisor Yee.
Aye.
Yee, aye. Supervisor Avalos.
Aye.
Avalos, aye. Supervisor Breed. Breed, aye. Supervisor Campos.
Aye.
Campos, aye. Supervisor Chu.
Aye.
Chu, aye. Supervisor Cohen. Cohen, aye. Supervisor Farrell. Farrell, aye. Supervisor Kim. Kim, aye. Supervisor Marr.
Aye.
Marr, aye. Supervisor Tang.
Aye.
Tang, aye. Supervisor Wiener. Wiener, aye. There are 11 ayes.
Those ordinances are finally passed. Next item.
Item 4 is an ordinance to appropriate approximately $2 million from the General Fund Reserve to the Mayor's Office of Housing to be divided over 2 fiscal years, 2014-15 and 15-16, for legal services for unaccompanied children and families on the San Francisco Immigration Court's expedited removal docket.
Supervisor Campos.
Mr. President, I would ask if we could come back to this item after our 2:30 commendations.
Okay, colleagues, if we could re-refer this item, and why don't we now go to item 5.
Item 5 is a resolution to approve a sublease and property management agreement on Treasure Island and Yerba Buena Islands for market rate rental housing between the Treasure Island Development Authority and the John Stewart Company, with a yearly base rent of approximately $633,000 for a 7-year term.
Colleagues, same house, same call. This resolution is adopted. Item 6.
Item 6 is a resolution to retroactively authorize the Office of the District Attorney to renew its current agreement with the California Victim Compensation and Government Claims Board for a revolving fund in the amount of $75,000 to be used to pay for verified funeral, burial, relocation, crime scene cleanup, and other emergency loss expenses for eligible homicide victims for the period of July 1st, 2014 through June 30th, 2017.
Same house, same call. This resolution is adopted. Item 7.
Item 7, resolution to retroactively authorize the Office of the District Attorney to accept an in-kind gift of technical assistance, prosecution, and racial justice program with a value of approximately $409,000 from the Vera Institute of Justice for the grant period of July 1st, 2014 through June 30th, 2015.
Same house, same call. This resolution is adopted. Next item.
Item 8 is a resolution to retroactively authorize the Office of the District Attorney to accept and expend a technical assistance grant valued at approximately $228,000 from the Vera Institute of Justice, funded by the Foundation to Promote Open Society for the grant period of June 1st, 2014 through May 31st, 2016.
Same house, same call. This resolution is adopted. Next item.
Item 9 is an ordinance to amend the building code regarding earthquake performance evaluation of private school structures.
Any discussion? Supervisor Wiener.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I want to thank everyone who was involved in helping to make this legislation possible. Colleagues, we know that we are embarked on a major effort over a period of years and years to make sure that our city is prepared for the inevitable big one, and specifically to make sure that our infrastructure and our building stock is able to withstand a major earthquake. Last year we passed a groundbreaking legislation to require soft story retrofits for certain apartment buildings. That was a huge step forward. We have other legislation that is moving forward as well in various stages of the process in terms of formulating them to make sure that our building stock will withstand an earthquake, that we keep people safe, and that we are a resilient city. This legislation addresses our significant number of private schools in San Francisco. We have many children in San Francisco who are attending private schools, many families who rely on them, and we need to make sure that when the big one hits, that those children, the teachers, the staff, people are able to be safe and to get out unharmed. The legislation does not require retrofits, but it requires that within a few years, private schools engage in an evaluation so that they know what their seismic vulnerability is and what they would need to do to be able to address that vulnerability. This legislation has gone through a fair amount of dialogue because the private school community, while making very clear that its support of the legislation and of doing the evaluations and of keeping their kids seismically or safe during an earthquake, expressed concerns about the potential impact of the legislation on the ability of some of the schools to survive. Although there is a stereotype that all private schools are wealthy, that is not the case. There are quite a few private schools that serve largely low-income, working-class families, and those schools do not have the ability to just whip together a capital campaign and quickly do whatever work they need to do. So there was a desire to see the legislation move forward, but apprehension as well. Working with Patrick Ottolini in the mayor's office and representatives of the private school community, we were able to really just have strong dialogue over a period of months, and now have an amended version of the legislation that will accomplish the legislation's goals 100%, while taking into account the unique needs of our private schools. Again, I want to thank Mr. Odolini. I want to thank the entire private school coalition that worked very hard and in good faith to get the legislation to move forward. And I also just want to acknowledge Jeff Cretin in my office, who spent quite a bit of time helping to bring the parties together to come up with what I think is a terrific piece of legislation. Thank you.
Supervisor Farrell.
Thank you, President Chu. I just want to thank Supervisor Wiener for his leadership on this issue. This is, as a parent of children in a religious private school here in San Francisco, I know this is a great concern, and I think we struck a balance here. I do want to thank Mr. Odolini, all the people from the coalition. I do want to thank the Archdiocese as well, who has a significant amount of the Archdiocese schools and the parish schools here in San Francisco. We all want our kids and teachers and school employees to be safe, and I think this strikes a good balance and really make sure that we are preparing ourselves for the future. So again, thank you to Supervisor Wiener for his leadership.
Colleagues, any additional comments? I also want to echo Supervisor Farrell in thanking all the various stakeholders who've been involved, and just note that yesterday marked the first important deadline of our mandatory soft story retrofit program for individuals to step up in conducting the screening process, and we saw a 90% compliance rate, which was an incredibly high compliance rate for this first step. I just want to congratulate Mr. Odolini as well as our earthquake safety team in the city, and look forward to further work in this area. With that, colleagues, can we take this item same house, same call? Without objection, this ordinance is passed on the first reading. Why don't we skip over our 2:30 special order until 2:30 and proceed to item 10.
Items 10 through 12 were considered by the Government Audit and Oversight Committee at a regular meeting on Thursday, September 11th, and sent to the board as committee report. Item 10 is a resolution to respond to the presiding judge of the Superior Court on the findings and recommendations contained in the 2013-14 Civil Grand Jury Report entitled "The Port of San Francisco Caught Between the Public Trust and Private Dollars," and urging the mayor to cause the implementation of accepted findings and recommendations through his department heads and through the development of the annual budget.
Colleagues, same house, same call. This resolution is adopted. Item 11.
Item 11 is a resolution responding to the presiding judge of the Superior Court on the findings and recommendations contained in the 2013-14 Civil Grand Jury Report entitled "Rising Sea Levels at Our Doorstep," and urging the mayor to cause the implementation of the accepted findings and recommendations through the development of the annual budget.
Same house, same call. This resolution is adopted. Item 12.
Item 12, resolution responding to the presiding judge of the Superior Court on the findings and recommendations contained in the 2013-14 Civil Grand Jury Report entitled "Ethics in the City, Promise, Practice, or Pretense," and urging the implementation of the accepted findings and recommendations through the development of the annual budget.
Colleagues, same house, same call. This resolution is adopted. And with that, why don't we go to roll? Supervisor Campos, would you like me to acknowledge you now, or should we go to roll call?
We can do it now.
Okay. Why don't we go back to item 4?
Commendations first.
Okay. So then why don't we go to roll call, colleagues?
First on roll call to introduce new business is Supervisor Breed.
Thank you. Colleagues, I ask that you bear with me. I have a very lengthy item to discuss, and I wanted to give you some pretext before I get into the details about what I'm actually proposing. Right outside these chambers is the bust of one of our predecessors, former Supervisor Harvey Milk. I've heard a famous story about Harvey that whenever he entered the City Hall chamber on his way up to this particular chamber, he made a point to walk up the grand main staircase. It reminds me of how hard I worked to get here, he told his friends. Today, when I walked up those stairs, I had a very similar reaction. I looked around at the polished marble, the history. I walked the steps where so many leaders have gone before me, and I think to myself, it's truly a privilege to serve. None of us here at the board, the mayor's office, or any city department is entitled to lead. We are not owed these jobs. No, we have been given the opportunity to serve the people of San Francisco, and we owe them our very best. Let me first say very clearly, I'm not happy about what I have to say today. I did not want to do this publicly. Frankly, I did not want to do it at all. But the reality I had long hoped to avoid is now staring us plainly in the face. San Francisco's fire department is in disarray. Our emergency medical system, our EMS system, it's in a state of crisis. Public safety is in jeopardy, and I and many others have lost faith in the department's leadership, specifically in the chief's ability to fix it. I like and respect Chief Joanne Hayes-White. I've known her for a really long time. She is a very likable person. She's a native San Franciscan who has served the city for decades, and she is a great ambassador for the department. But as a public servant, as a supervisor, and as a former fire commissioner, I have to do what's right for the people that I serve. Before personality, before friendship, before tradition comes service and responsibility. Putting aside EMS for a minute, even a brief overview of recent events at the fire department will give you a sense of its trouble. In 2008, the department won a federal port security grant for nearly $10 million to purchase a new fire boat. FEMA gave them 3 years to complete the project with 2 optional 1-year extensions. The department missed the deadline and asked for a 1-year extension. It missed again and asked for a second extension. By 2013, when no matter what the boat was supposed to be done by, or nearly done, the fire department had not even started building. The department leadership made requests for time. FEMA refused and had given the money to other counties throughout the Bay Area. Administrative failures at the department cost us nearly $10 million and left us with boats, the Guardian and the Phoenix, that are over 50 years old. There's little confidence in the fire department's promotion and testing programs, either from the rank and file members or from the jurors who had been asked to hear their cases. Last October, a jury awarded $3.7 million to 15 veteran firefighters who sued the city for age discrimination in the department's 2008 promotional exam. And as the Budget and Legislative Analyst report from January of this year noted, based on interviews with the department employees, confidence in the fairness of the promotional process has not improved. The city currently has 3 pending lawsuits challenging promotional exams. There have been several troubling stories of the department employees, including high-ranking members of the chief's command staff, engaging in dangerous and illegal behavior. In a controversy that ultimately involved 2 assistant chiefs, earlier this year, a firefighter injured a motorcyclist while driving a fire engine drunk, then fled the scene after the accident. And just 2 weeks ago, we learned of an assistant deputy chief, the head of Homeland Security and Special Operations, who hit a car while driving his department-issue vehicle off-duty in Sonoma. The assistant chief continued driving, and when the other vehicle followed him, he turned on his flashing lights and drove past a stop sign. This is the person the chief's tasked with leading the department's terrorism preparations and coordinating federal grants similar to the one we received for the fireboat. As the Budget and Legislative Analysts also pointed out, unlike most every other department, the fire department lacks succession planning or 5-year strategic plans or fleet replacement, things that as a former fire commissioner, I continue to advocate for to no avail. One firefighter told me with some dark humor that the department's plan is to react. Morale is clearly down throughout the entire department. I know this because I hear from members day in and day out. We get their text messages and their letters and their phone calls. Their complaints are not about pay or work conditions. Firefighters and paramedics work hard. They are paid well, and by and large, they like what they do. No, their complaint is about the department is not giving them the tools that they need to do their job. They are tired of standing by a patient for 45 minutes waiting on an ambulance that isn't available. And they are tired of going to work in the morning knowing that it's going to happen again the next day. But all of these issues, bad as they are the pretext. They are the lenses through which I ask you to look at the real crises, the fire department's emergency medical services, or the EMS. Bear in mind, EMS, not fires, constitutes over 70% of the calls that go into the department. I held a hearing at the Government Audit and Oversight Committee on January 23rd where the budget and legislative analysts reported that medic-to-follow calls, when the department literally does not have an ambulance available to send to an emergency, increased over 500% since 2008. In 2013, the department averaged 8 times each day when it did not have an ambulance to send to someone in need. And the department was well below its mandated call response rate under its own exclusive operating area with the state. This was in January. In February, I introduced and the board passed a motion for the budget and legislative analysts to conduct a follow-up audit, specifically about the fire department's allocation of resources and management of its EMS system. Throughout the spring, I continued to speak both here and to the press about EMS problems in the fire department because it's a public safety issue and it's important that we as a body address it. On March 1st, the Chronicle ran a front page story, then the San Jose Mercury News, then the Chronicle again. I held a hearing at the GAO committee on June 12 to hear the second audit of the budget and legislative analysts, and this was on June 12th, and on June 13th, the Chronicle ran another front page story, San Francisco lacks medics and ambulances to meet its 911 needs. The stories go on and on and on, both in print and television. Has all of this attention compelled the department to improve? Has the leadership recognized the urgency of the situation that we're facing? On Saturday, August 30th, the San Francisco Fire Department had to ask a private ambulance company to step in and help the department respond to these emergencies. The department dismissed it as something that doesn't happen very often, except it happened again on that Thursday and then again on Sunday. And if this is happening on an average Sunday, what happens in the event of an earthquake or any other catastrophic event that might happen in San Francisco? There were 374 occasions when it took more than 20 minutes for ambulances to arrive last month alone, 374 times. I hear horrible reports, an 87-year-old man with a broken hip and cracked skull who had to wait 45 minutes for an ambulance to arrive in the Sunset, who sadly then died 2 days later. A man in North Beach with a finger cut off, sitting next to him on ice while he waited 38 minutes for an ambulance. Firefighters performing active CPR for over 20 minutes on the street at 6th and Market awaiting an ambulance. On 15 minutes on an off-duty firefighter who collapsed in church during a Sunday mass. Firefighters are arriving on a scene of active fires while the department is in medic to follow, meaning they have no backup, no ambulance to help them if they are injured or the folks that they may carry out of a fire. Patients are being transported to the hospital in the backs of police cars because there's no one else to take them. This is a serious, ongoing threat to public safety. It is, as Firefighters Union President Tom O'Connor said, a public health hazard that is only growing worse and worse. Our medics are running ragged, handling call volumes that far exceed all industrial standards or other cities' practices. They are being mandated to work overtime day after day. There's no training time slotted for medics or EMTs because they are way too busy dealing with calls. You could argue the department is simply short of ambulances and the board needs to approve more funding, except, and this is perhaps the most egregious fact of all, we already did. Let me read from the Budget and Legislative Analyst's June audit. The fact that the Board of Supervisors appropriated the funds requested by the San Francisco Fire Department to authorize 16 ambulances in the fire department's budget for fiscal year 2012-2013, fiscal year 2013 and 2014, and fiscal year 14 and 15 budgets, not even one of these 16 ambulances has been purchased to date. As a result, the San Francisco Fire Department takes the existing aging ambulances out of service regularly for repairs, reducing the number of units available to respond to calls. We gave them the money for ambulances, and in the face of this crisis, They haven't even bothered to use it. Since I spoke about the EMS crisis last week, I am told that the EMS working group under the direction of the mayor's office started crafting a plan to address the problems. Yesterday, I was, for the first time, invited to participate in the working group, which I will gladly begin doing immediately. I am told so far the plan includes a 30-day mutual aid cooperative agreement contract with a private ambulance provider, essentially a month-long version of the call help the department issued a couple of weeks ago. Number two, the efforts to reduce the EMS evaluation calls when police are summoned and address so-called frequent flyer EMS users at the shelters. And number three, the possibility of more immediate EMS hiring. I am, of course, glad that something may improve, but why did it have to take this long and go this far? Why was the public safety jeopardized before the department took notice? Why is this just happening now after I took the matter to the mayor last week? What has been going on for the last 6 months, for the last year, for the last 2 years? The situation has even come this far is a reflection of failed leadership and a failed system. As a member of the board, we do not have the authority to hire or fire the chief. In fact, Section 2.1114 of the city charter prevents us from interfering in those decisions. And I don't intend to do so. But in the interest of public safety for the people I serve and all those who waited for an ambulance that couldn't come, I will bring to light a crisis and give voters a chance to have their say at the ballot. Today, I'm introducing a drafting request asking the city attorney to draft a charter amendment that will ensure our EMS crisis is resolved and that we do not allow this to happen again. In the coming weeks, I will consult with medical experts, members of the department, and the State Emergency Services Authority to define what a minimum standard of emergency medical service should be for an industrialized city that cares for its people. This standard could be based on the average response time to emergency calls, the number of medic-to-follow calls, or the number of emergency calls with over 10-minute waits. Or it can simply be defined minimum number of ambulances and medics needed to serve the city safely. Whatever the matrix, the ballot measure will require the city and the fire department to always meet this minimum level of acceptable service. There is actually a great precedent for this idea. In 2005, Proposition F proposed that the city and the department maintain a minimum staffing level of service for its fire suppression. The voters of San Francisco approved this by a 15-point margin. EMS is over 70% of the call volume of the fire department. Doesn't it seem logical that we create a minimum standard for EMS like we have for fire suppression? The people of San Francisco pay the fire chief over $300,000 a year. I think we are entitled to expect at least a minimum level of service and safety. Leadership is a privilege earned with promise and kept with success. Today, I'm not confident that our fire department's leadership has either. This ballot measure will force them to improve or move on. And in doing so, it will improve public safety for everyone in San Francisco. Colleagues, I have one other item, an in memoriam. This is an in memoriam for Lawrence Shelton Sr. Lawrence Edward Shelton Sr. was born in Hanceyville, Alabama in October of 1941. He was raised and educated in Alabama until the age of 13. Lawrence then moved to West Virginia to live with his father, a coal miner. He attended high school in West Virginia, where he quickly became close to his future wife, Miss Annette Williams, who later became Dr. Annette Shelton. Lawrence and Annette soon became high school sweethearts and married in 1960, beginning a journey together that would last almost 57 and a half years. In Columbus, Ohio, Lawrence built a career in rug manufacturing and became an active member of local AFL-CIO. In 1973, Lawrence and the family moved to San Francisco, where he continued his work with labor groups and the NAACP. Lawrence is remembered by all for his smile, his love of conversation, and his commitment to seeing the good in all people above all. He was a free spirit and a great soul. Lawrence is survived by his wife, Dr. Annette Shelton, who's here today, and one of his daughters is here today. They had 4 children together, 8 grandchildren, and countless other family members and friends who greatly inspired his strength of will and free spirit. I would like to acknowledge Dr. Shelton, who is a strong community advocate, one that has continued to fight for the rights of people all over and continues to remain faithful to her church family. And I see the rest of your family made it here. My colleagues and I extend our heartfelt condolences to you at your time of loss. Our community will remember Mr. Shelton for years to come. Thank you for being here, and today we are honored to adjourn this board meeting in his memory. So thank you for being here. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor.
The rest I submit.
Thank you. Mr. President.
Thank you. Colleagues, what I'd like to do at this time is go to our 2:30 special order before we come back to roll call. So why don't we now proceed to Supervisor Campos.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. President. And it is my honor to recognize a number of children who came out to our Budget and Finance Committee a few days back to discuss the very important subject of the plight of tens of thousands of children that have been fleeing Central America to this country, seeking refuge from our nation. I do want to note that the translation devices that have been made available, are not working properly. So for many of them, it's really hard to understand what's happening. So that's probably something to look into for the board. But we will talk about the specifics of the item when we get back to that item as the meeting progresses. But I want to take this opportunity to recognize the children, and we are talking about children who came to our hearing to testify about their experiences. I know from my own experience that crossing the border as a child undocumented is a horrific experience. I had the benefit of doing it with a parent, that these are kids that did it on their own without a parent with them. It just makes the idea of what they went through just impossible to imagine. And we as adults, we can talk until we're blue in the face about the challenges that these kids are facing, but ultimately it is these kids that are the only ones who can articulate what they have gone through, what they had to face, and that they had the courage to come to a building like this one to testify is a testament to the fact that these are very special kids. And government has failed them in their native countries, and that they would have the trust to come before a government body like this one is something that I'm very appreciative of. And so I want to take this opportunity, not only as a supervisor, but as a resident of this city, to thank them for having the courage to share their experience with them, because in sharing with us and sharing their experience, not only are they helping themselves, but they're helping tens of thousands of kids who are going through a similar experience. And I'll say this in Spanish. Es para mí un honor en este momento reconocer a los niños que tuvieron el valor y el coraje de venir y hablar a esta mesa de supervisores. Yo puedo decir de mi propia experiencia como alguien que vino a este país indocumentado como niño también, que yo entiendo qué traumático esa experiencia es. Yo tuve el beneficio de tener mi madre en ese proceso y estamos hablando de niños que vinieron a este país solos. Entonces, en nombre de la Mesa de Supervisores, quiero tomar esta oportunidad de reconocer a los niños que vinieron al Comité de Finanzas a presentar su testimonio, agradecerles de parte de la ciudad por su valor. Presentándose ustedes, no solamente se están ayudando a ustedes mismos, pero están ayudando a miles y miles de niños en otras partes del país que están enfrentando la misma experiencia. Así que por su valor quisiera, en nombre de la Mesa de Supervisores, reconocerlos. Entonces, si podrían pasar aquí al podio cuando llame su nombre. If they can please come up to the podium when I call their name. William Garcia, Walter Garcia, Brian Suchi, Edwin Suchi, Natalie Ulloa, Fátima Ulloa, Axa Gutiérrez Ramos, Luis Antonio Cornejo Girón, Marilyn Corina de León Salazar, Stephanie Paola Villalobos Moreno, Melkin Iván Cabrera Reyes. And I know that a couple of them are going to say a few words. Yo sé que algunos de ellos van a decir ciertas palabras.
Tengan todos muy buenas tardes. Mi nombre es Natalie Dayanara Ulloa. Les vengo a pedir muchas gracias que aquí están conmigo.
Good afternoon. My name is Natalie, and I am here to thank you all today.
Les pido muchas gracias que están aquí conmigo y que los den abogados para que no tengamos problemas y podemos estar un poco más en este lugar con ustedes. Así que les doy muchas gracias que están aquí conmigo y que también a los demás niños que pueden advertirles unas cosas que son muy importantes para ustedes y para los demás niños.
I am here to thank you all for being here with me and the children here and many more children, and for giving us the opportunity to have attorneys that we need and so we can stay here longer.
Los niños tienen algo importante que decirles a ustedes para poder confiar en nosotros y también nosotros poder confiar en ustedes, para que los den abogados, para que no puedan deportarlos para nuestros países, porque de nuestros países venimos huyendo de ese gran peligro. Gracias.
Children have something really important to offer you all, just like you all have something important to offer us. And we're so grateful that you're going to help us so that we're not deported back to our countries because we fled here because it's too dangerous for us to be in our countries. Thank you.
Hola, mi nombre es Fátima.
Hi, my name is Fatima.
Yo vengo de El Salvador.
I'm here from El Salvador.
Lo que les quiero decir es que muchas gracias porque los están ayudando a buscar abogados.
I want to say thank you because you're helping us find attorneys.
Cuando nosotros los niños los más necesitamos.
When here we are, children, the people who need them the most.
Gracias.
Thank you.
Hola, me llamo Luis y soy del Salvador.
Hi, my name is Luis, and I am from El Salvador.
Y acabo de ganar el asilo y gracias por a Panja por darme a 2 abogadas gratis.
And I just won asylum, and I am here to thank Pangea, who provided me with 2 attorneys free of charge.
Y quisiera que hubieran más abogados gratuitos para los niños.
I wish that there were more free attorneys for the children.
Para estar con sus padres y sus hermanitos.
To be with their parents and their brothers and sisters.
Como yo.
Like me.
Gracias.
Thank you.
Muy buenos días, me llamo Axa, tengo 5 años.
Good morning, my name is Axa. I am 5 years old.
Quiero que voten por nosotros y les damos las gracias y no quiero que a los niños los deporten.
I am here to thank you, and I hope that you vote for us and with us.
Estamos indefensos y queremos que ustedes nos den nuestra oportunidad.
We are defenseless, and we hope that you help us have an opportunity.
Gracias.
Thank you.
Hola, mi nombre es Brian y quiero agradecerles por el dinero que nos han donado para los abogados.
Hello, my name is Brian, and I'm here to thank you for the money that you're providing us for attorneys.
Nos han dado una oportunidad más de estar aquí y ser alguien en la vida.
You're giving us an opportunity to be here and to be something and someone in life.
Gracias.
Thank you.
Buenas tardes, mi nombre es Walter. Les quiero agradecer a todos por estar acá y muchas gracias por el dinero que nos han donado. Ahora nos sentimos más fortalecidos. Muchas gracias.
Good afternoon. My name is Walter. Thank you for the money you are donating to help us have attorneys. We feel much more supported and strengthened now that you've done that. Thank you.
Hola, buenas tardes. Mi nombre es Marilyn.
Good afternoon. My name is Marilyn.
Y ya gané mi asilo y estoy muy feliz y me siento en paz y segura.
And I won my asylum, and I feel so much more at peace and happy.
Y mi deseo es que todos los niños puedan estar también como yo, felices y en paz y seguros.
And my dream is that all the children can be like me and at peace and happy.
Y gracias por el apoyo que les están brindando a los demás niños. Gracias.
And thank you for the support you're providing to all the other children. Thank you.
Adorable.
Gracias. Thank you.
Call.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Why don't we go back to roll call, Madam Clerk?
Supervisor Campos is next on roll call for the introduction of new business.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. And I have one item. Actually, I have a couple of items. The first is substitute legislation that I'm introducing with respect to the issue of buyouts. As you know, on July 29th, I introduced legislation that would, for the first time, regulate tenant buyouts here in San Francisco. Buyouts are when a landlord offers a tenant a monetary sum in exchange for the tenant vacating the unit. And this is something that happens outside the eviction process. Buyouts, in essence, are a loophole from our perspective in the just cause eviction law. And we know from the report that was issued by the budget and legislative analysts that it is estimated that for every Ellis Act eviction, there may be as many as 7 buyouts that happen. The recently released report analyzed data from the tenants union and found that the number of clients seeking advice on buyouts has increased every year between calendar years 2009 to 2013, from 76 clients to 175 clients. The legislation that I introduced does a number of things, including increasing the fairness of buyout negotiations and agreements by requiring landlords to provide tenants with a statement of their rights at several points during the buyout negotiation process, by allowing the city to collect data on the number and frequency of buyouts so that we can better understand the actual true level of displacement here in San Francisco, and to preserve rent-controlled units in the city by no longer allowing buyouts to be used to avoid condo conversion restrictions which are attached to other no-fault evictions. After several discussions with the rent board and in an effort to relieve some of the administrative burden that the legislation could have on the agency in terms of enforcement, I am now introducing substitute legislation which differs from the original in the following ways. One, in addition to requiring a landlord to inform a tenant of his or her rights at the time of commencing buyout negotiations, the legislation requires a landlord to reiterate those rights at the time the buyout agreement is reduced to writing. Second, the substitute legislation requires that all buyout agreements be in writing and that a tenant can cancel an agreement at any time within the 45 days following his or her signature on a buyout agreement. The substitute legislation requires a landlord to pay a fee at the time he or she files the buyout agreement to cover the rent board's costs related to the filing of the buyout agreement. The substitute legislation also removes any administrative enforcement provisions in the original version of the ordinance and instead allows tenants, nonprofits, C3s or C4s with a primary mission of protecting tenants' rights, or the city attorney's office to enforce provisions of the law in San Francisco Superior Court. I look forward to discussing the legislation when it comes before the Budget and Finance Committee on October 8th, I believe is a tentative date. I also want to thank Supervisors Kim, Marr, and Avalos for their co-sponsorship of this legislation. The last item that I have is an item that I am introducing as a resolution, and I want to thank Supervisor Wiener for his co-sponsorship. On July 20th, 2012, the Food and Drug Administration approved the first drug preventing the sexual transmission of HIV. PrEP, which is short for pre-exposure prophylaxis, is a prevention strategy in which HIV-negative people take the anti-HIV medication Truvada to reduce the risk of becoming infected. Medical research trials show that if a patient adheres to a daily pill regimen similar to the taking of a birth control pill, PrEP can nearly eliminate the risk of contracting HIV. If widely implemented, PrEP could be the game changer, indeed, the game changer that we need to effectively fight HIV. We in San Francisco have led the way in HIV treatment for so many years. And even though we have accomplished much, in the last 5 years, we still had 2,066 people in San Francisco who were newly diagnosed with HIV. HIV infections among women, Latinos, African Americans, transgender people, and gay men continue to rise to this day. Globally, more than $10 billion is spent each year on HIV/AIDS, but that doesn't include the intangible costs of lost productivity, wages, and premature death due to this disease. Additionally, we know that for every HIV infection that is prevented, that $355,000 is saved in the cost of providing lifelong HIV care and treatment. The Center for Disease Controls has stated that PrEP could have a significant impact on the U.S. HIV epidemic. And yet, notwithstanding that fact, fewer than 1,000 San Franciscans have had access to PrEP. And since San Francisco has played a leadership role in the response to HIV for more than 30 years, we need to once again play a leadership role to make sure that we roll out PrEP to the fullest extent possible. It is simply time for San Francisco to play that leadership role once again. Approvals by the FDA, by the Centers for Disease Control, and others who help to create greater access and insurance reimbursement for PrEP have made this available to some people, but obstacles remain. Despite studies showing PrEP's effectiveness in preventing new HIV infection, many physicians remain hesitant to prescribe PrEP due to a lack of familiarity with the treatment. Additionally, although most insurance companies provide coverage, some require prior authorization, and depending on an individual's insurance coverage, individual costs can vary significantly. This Thursday, I will be holding a hearing before the Neighborhood Services and Safety Committee to start a public discussion here in San Francisco as to how we as a city can take a leadership role in providing PrEP to San Franciscans regardless of income. I would like to thank Project Inform, the San Francisco AIDS Foundation for their continued support. And by passing this resolution, we are ensuring that San Francisco once again leads the way in making sure that we do everything we can to eradicate HIV from our society. The rest I submit.
Thank you, Supervisor Campos. President Chu.
Thank you, colleagues. Today I have two items. The first is an in memoriam for someone who I've known for almost close to 20 years. Alden Gilchrist was someone who has been the director of music at Calvary Presbyterian Church since 1965 for the past 49 years. At the age of 19, he received his college degree from Lewis and Clark University and then moved to our City by the Bay, which has been his home residence for the rest of his life. He received a master's degree from Berkeley. He was a recipient of the Prix de Paris, studying composition in Paris, and then active in our Bay Area and San Francisco music education scene for decades, and was the founder and former president of Music in Schools Today, an organization whose purpose has been to restore music to the curriculum of our local public schools. In 1991, he was honored by Newcomer High School for his contribution to the teaching of English to hundreds of immigrant young people through the sounds of choral music. He actually taught immigrant senior high school students to sing songs as a way of teaching them to speak English, and he even composed songs for them, one of which was entitled What to Do in the Event of an Earthquake, during which the students would not only sing the words, but also act them out. At Calvary Presbyterian Church, in addition to leading the church's choir and quartets for Sunday services and concerts for decades, he also led concert tours in Europe and directed youth choirs, as well as musical plays. In recent years, Alden formed Calvary Concert Connect, which is a unique concept by which professional musicians are sponsored in concerts at the church with voluntary donations, the totals of which were to be split between musicians and one of the many community service organizations that the church helps to support. In 2011, Alden's 60th anniversary with the church was celebrated with an amazing weekend of musical events. And I just want to, on behalf of our Board of Supervisors, the Calvary membership, as well as San Francisco, we want to extend to his family and his loved ones our deepest regrets. I also have one item. I'm pleased to join Mayor Lee and Supervisor Farrell in sponsoring the master lease for 250 Kearny Street. In my first few years in office, I worked with the Chinatown Community Development Center and other housing advocates to bring attention to then 250 Kearny, which was named one of the worst SROs in the city. And fortunately, the future of that site is much brighter. After being closed for several years, the residential hotel has changed ownership and presents an amazing opportunity to provide high-quality housing for formerly homeless veterans in a wonderful neighbor in the heart of my district. Today, we're introducing a master lease by HSA for a 136-unit residential hotel at the corner of Kearny and Bush. Each unit has a private bathroom with a large communal kitchen. Private donors have also committed to stepping up to continue in our efforts to end homelessness among veterans. I want to thank the leadership of the San Francisco Housing Authority, other city departments, and the Homes for Heroes team that includes HUD, the VA, Brilliant Corners, and Swords to Plowshares, who I worked with in 2010 to help build the 150 Otis project for formerly homeless veterans. In our city of St. Francis, we need to continue to lead to build housing for the least fortunate among us, and in particular to honor our homeless veterans, our men and women who once served our country but are in critical needs of assistance to get off our streets. The rest of my items I will submit.
Thank you, Mr. President. Supervisor Cohen.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. Good afternoon again, everyone. Colleagues, today I'm requesting that the City Attorney's Office work with me to prepare legislation to limit the use of 24-hour restrictions around construction sites. I've received numerous complaints from residents all across my district about poor notification and the unnecessary long periods of time that parking is removed for construction. Now, while construction is only allowed to take place between the hours of 7 a.m. and to 6 p.m., Monday through Saturday, contractors actually take the entire street. Contractors often take the entire streets of parking for 24 hours, sometimes for several months. As you can imagine, that presents a problem. Now, while I can appreciate the project sponsors' need to ensure that they have space for loading equipment and reserving parking during hours when they're not working, it's unnecessary to have this level of impact on our neighborhoods. These 24-hour restrictions may leave many streets in our neighborhoods off limits to people who want to patronize local businesses in the evening hours, visit friends and family members, or even impact residents who need overnight parking. We need our streets repaved, we need new infrastructure installed and new housing to be built, but we need to be smarter about how this construction impacts our neighborhoods. Taking entire streets of parking offline during non-construction hours to sit vacant doesn't serve anyone. So I believe that we can strike the right balance between ensuring that construction can be completed efficiently and minimizing the impacts to our neighborhood. Without legislative changes to the current system, we will continue to see systems that work disproportionately in favor of construction contractors and not our neighborhoods. The other final request is a request to the budget legislative analysts to do an audit identifying where resources are being spent, how resources are being spent when it comes to our city's response to violence, specifically gun violence. And Madam Clerk, the rest I submit. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Cohen. Supervisor Farrell. Supervisor Kim.
Thank you. Today I am submitting 2 hearing requests. The first is a hearing on our recent Don't Block the Box pilot in partnership with the San Francisco Municipal Transportation Agency. First of all, I would like to thank SFMTA for responding to our office on this pedestrian safety initiative that our office has been working on in conjunction with our South Beach, Rincon Hill, and Yerba Buena residents, who have been pushing for this over the past year through both our monthly District 6 Pedestrian Safety Work Group, which meets monthly, and the former Pier 3032 Warriors Arena CAC. In response, over the summer, SFMTA launched a pilot, gathering data and using for the first time parking control officers to issue traffic citations at 2 pilot intersections, Main and Harrison, and 2nd and Bryant. At every signal change, staff counted the numbers of cars remaining in the intersection or in the box after the red light, thereby blocking it and preventing cross traffic from moving through. They also counted the number of pedestrians and cyclists forced to navigate around cars dangerously, documenting safety concerns. An example of some of the data that was gathered on one of these evenings, SFMTA issued 102 citations over a 2-hour period, totaling in $10,730 in intersection gridlock and turning violation fines. They were also able to count the number of cars that were in the box, and pedestrians and cyclists that had to dangerously maneuver around them. As many of you have heard on the board, this has long been an important issue for our office in continuing our pedestrian safety efforts in District 6. During, for example, the 706 mission, Mexican Museum development, one of the agreements was a commitment by the developer to fund a 12B officers just to cite block the box violations on the 3rd Street corridor, something that we hear a lot about impacting the safety of our residents who walk in our district, which we want to encourage. The San Francisco Transportation Authority also did a study in 2013 to help plan for the management and accommodation of the 60% of new housing units and 80% of new jobs that are being concentrated in the South of Market and Mission Bay area. Daily trips within the downtown core are currently at 290,000, including those that are walking, cycling, and in their private vehicles. But we are projected to swell to 320,000 by 2035. Many of our residents and workers are already experiencing this, and I've heard anecdotally that rush hour now starts at 2:30 p.m. In the South Market as cars race to get on the Bay Bridge, the 280, and the 101. We're also seeing an increase in short trips by 23%. And SFCTA has projected that we will need a 26% reduction in auto traffic in SOMA in particular to avoid a complete and total gridlock or Carmageddon within the next couple of decades. A key part of this anti-congestion strategy is a strong Don't Block the Box campaign. This hearing will be an opportunity to hear back on what tools are best to achieve less cars clashing with pedestrians in our crosswalk, as well as laying out a plan for next steps and a permanent implementation of this pilot in high conflict area. Our office is also working with SFMTA and the Mayor's office to push for an approval at the state level for us to be able to issue block the box cameras, similar to the red light violation cameras that we see throughout the city, to supplement our stretched out police resources and provide constant traffic management. I want to thank again SFMTA for taking this work on at the state level and would like an update at the board of where we are at and our future timeline and being able to implement this traffic congestion program in the long term. We're also asking DPT, SFPD to attend this hearing as well to present. The second hearing is a follow-up to Supervisor Campos's legislation, his hearing request and supplemental appropriation, which we will be voting on after roll call. And this is a request to unaccompanied minors, but with a focus on educational and support services for undocumented youth within our schools and youth and family systems. This is a request that has also come from SFUSD and, of course, Commissioner Matt Haney, who has been working on this issue on the Board of Education. We'd like to hear this at our joint school and city select committee, and we'll be hearing from Department of Public Health, SFUSD, and HAS on coordinated campaign to administer services and allocate resources citywide. And I'd like to recognize Supervisor Campos and you who are co-sponsoring this hearing request. And the rest I submit.
Thank you, Supervisor Kim. Supervisor Marr.
Thank you. I wanted to especially give props to Supervisor David Campos for bringing the brave children into our chambers, not only the brave 5-year-old, but all of you, and thank you to the families and the immigrant rights movement for being here and all the allies for this historic moment as we support financially legal support for unaccompanied minors and immigrants facing deportation. I also wanted to thank Supervisor Kim for using the term Carmageddon. It kind of woke me up a bit as I think about our auto dependency and addiction to oil. As the nation and world continue to grapple with our climate crisis, especially in the global south, in the third world, and especially in low-income communities and communities of color here in the U.S., I would like to reemphasize the importance of Sunday's September 21st People's Climate March in New York City. But we have a local event that's happening here in the Bay Area as well that Northern California environmental justice groups, low-income people's organizations, and the broader environmental movement will participate in. So this coming Sunday, in solidarity with the People's Climate March in New York City, supported by just about every environmental justice and social justice group in the country, we'll be having our Northern California People's Climate Rally, and Supervisor Avalos and I will both be there in Oakland this coming Sunday. And the rally is organized to call for a world with an economy that works for our communities and the planet, safety from the ravages of superstorms and climate change, and with good jobs, green jobs, clean air and water, peace and justice, and healthy communities. The local rally in Oakland is organized by dozens and dozens of organizations, a diverse coalition, not only mainstream environmental groups, but communities of color and environmental justice organizations as well. 350 Bay Area and the Sierra Club, of course, are involved, but also the Asian Pacific Environmental Network, Climate Parents, which I'm a part of, Code Pink, Crockett Rodeo United to Defend the Environment, or CRUDE, and many other grassroots organizations that have been sprouting up around the Kinder Morgan rail sites and the refineries in the Contra Costa area. 18 Million Rising, Activating Asian America, the Gray Panthers, Oakland Education Association, and the San Francisco Labor Council, Rainforest Action Network, West County Toxics Coalition that's been holding it down for the environmental justice movement for decades. Many leaders like our former president of the board, Matt Gonzalez, to Alejandro Soto from the Berkeley Rent Board and Communities for a Better Environment, Dan Kalb, former San Francisco activist, now in the Oakland City Council, and of course Mayor Gail McLaughlin of Richmond, California. But I invite people to join us this coming Sunday from 2 to 5 at Lake Merritt Amphitheater in Oakland, beautiful area of Oakland. I love Oakland. It will be a family-friendly event on the shores of Oakland's Lake Merritt, just a few short blocks from Lake Merritt's BART station. So we strongly encourage people to take public transit there. Sponsoring and endorsing organizations will be part of a, quote, climate fair with festivals for literature and discussion and a lot of stuff for our kids to enjoy. Please come out. Let's celebrate solidarity with those fighting for a healthier climate, green jobs economy, and a future for all of us. More information, Bay Area September, or Bay Area SEPT21.org, Bay Area SEPT21.org. Also, as we approach our Sunday climate marches and rallies, I wanted to talk about the next step in promoting sustainable transportation here in San Francisco. I think we need to continue to move aggressively to encourage less people to drive, raising the fears of Carmageddon, as Supervisor Kim brought up, but reducing the number of people and the cars on the streets and our aggressive climate action goals in our city. We need to move aggressively towards 20% of our trips made by bike by 2020 as our aggressive plans lay out. And of course, many of us may still need to drive at times, including people with disabilities and those whose jobs can't be reached by transit. But to help those that drive, we need to encourage others to walk, bike, or take transit, or a mixture of those kinds of modes of transportation to decrease congestion and competition for parking. This starts with continuing to build great multimodal options in our city. That's the engineering part. Also, we need to challenge what San Francisco State University author and Bay Guardian writer Jason Henderson calls automobility. It's this culture, this idea that everyone feels a need to drive everywhere in our city. I think we're making tremendous progress to improve the safety and effectiveness of many other options. Like today in our state, a new law goes into effect that creates a 3-foot bike buffer so that bicyclists can have at least 3 feet of space away from cars in major corridors as they're riding their bikes. I think it's an important law that will help make our streets safer, especially for bicyclists, and improve our efforts towards Vision Zero in the city, making biking safe for people from 8 to 80, especially children and families. And today I'm calling with Supervisor Avalos as a co-sponsor for a hearing on improving our bike access on Muni buses and also light rail vehicles. So it includes expanding bike access on buses. Right now, if I want to put my bike on a Muni bus, if there are already 2 bikes on there, I can't use it because that's the limit. So we're looking at expanding the capacity for those of us that ride our bikes and need to also take Muni. Also allowing bikes on light rail vehicles. Right now, you can't take them on there. Also improving bike routes and bike parking around transit hubs. And I wanted to thank Supervisor Avalos for working hard on improving bike parking in many parts of the city. I think it's the right time to have this conversation. Muni is in the midst of overhauling its fleet, as Supervisor Wiener and many of us know. New buses coming in should have a higher capacity bike racks, and new light rail vehicles should be designed to include space for bicycles along with strollers and seats for seniors and people with disabilities. Also, the governor recently signed AB 2707, which allows 40-foot buses to carry larger bike racks, and we should take advantage of that law. The key is to have this discussion now before the rest of the new fleet is delivered by the MTA. And I look forward to positive conversations with the MTA, our transportation authority, and community advocates about making Muni more accessible. Also, please join me and our mascot, Lou Seal, coming up this Friday to clean up the areas of the Richmond District. I'll be with 1,100 Presidio Middle School students on Friday at 9:30 in the morning at Presidio Middle School in the Richmond District. In February 2 years ago, the city and the Giants launched our Giant Sweep, which is a city campaign that brings together local schools, residents, businesses, and community groups to create a culture of clean. This event will involve not only Lucille and thousands of students, but community members as well to keep our neighborhoods clean. And I think signing a Giant Sweep pledge is critical for all of us so that we know that to keep San Francisco clean and beautiful, we use the right bins to recycle and to compost. We call 311 to report on sidewalk dumping. We also report on tagged property, and we take our trash with us when we leave trains and buses. I think that's actually a Burning Man principle of leave no trace, which I follow. I try to follow every day. For more information, please visit sfgiantssweep.org. Also, my muscles are very sore today because I've been practicing for the past 2 Sundays with a dragon boat team from the California Academy of Sciences. The 19th annual San Francisco International Dragon Boat Festival takes place on Treasure Island this coming weekend. It was really nice to beat the mayor's team 2 weeks ago, and it's a nice, friendly competitiveness among the 120 teams that are participating. It's the largest dragon boat race in the United States, and it's organized by our California Dragon Boat Association. Racing takes place on both days between 8 and 5, and the festival has music, performances, and food from 10 to 5. There's free shuttles that run from many parts of San Francisco to Treasure Island. I just wanted to say that the California Academy of Science team, organized by our friend General Manager Ike Kwan, is an amazing team, lots of unity, and I've really enjoyed working with them. We're a really fierce team, in my opinion. We're called the Leafy Sea Dragons, and our boat consists of 20 paddlers, a drummer, and a steering person that paddles across the finish line. The Dragon Boat Festival originated where my family originated, southern China, and it traditionally takes place on the 5th day of the 5th month in the lunar year around June in the Gregorian calendar. The traditional Chinese zhung, or Chinese rice tamales, are made during the festival. And each year there are many race festivals held around the world, including Asia, Australia, Europe, Canada, and the U.S. Along with races, various cultural performances consist of lion dancing, Chinese acrobats, Tai Chi demonstrations, Chinese ribbon and fan dances. Fan dancers will perform at the festival. I also wanted to add that the teams will race 500 meters out into the water of Treasure Island and compete to the finish line before other teams finish. And the teams are split into many different divisions, including but not limited to high school teams, college teams, and recreational teams. Also, you can get information about the Dragon Boat competition at sfdragonboat.com. Since I mentioned the California Academy of Sciences, I wanted to wish a happy birthday to one of the Richmond District's residents, Claude the albino alligator, that is celebrating his 19th. We don't call it a birthday, we call it a hatch day. And I think our Leafy Sea Dragon Academy of Sciences team will be racing and also celebrating Claude's birthday. I also wanted to say that later today we'll be honoring Jonathan Foley, the new director of the Academy of Sciences, and I'm sure he'll be coming to the board to introduce himself very soon. He's been very active in hitting the ground running in the Academy, and I wanted to thank General Manager Ike Kwan for always reaching out to my office and other offices to keep us informed of the great things happening at the Academy as well. And thanks also to outgoing Director Greg Farrington, Dr. Greg Farrington, for the love he brought to the Academy of Sciences as well. The last real quick one I have today, colleagues, is this coming Friday also is the Chinatown North Beach City College Campus Citizenship Day. So I'll be there with Dean Minhua Ta, who I taught with at SF State years and years ago, and many community leaders to honor citizenship and a fair and just pathway to citizenship for everyone. So this Citizenship Day celebration began over 30 years ago in the 80s during the immigrant rights movement that I was a part of, and it's continued as an annual tradition to celebrate the success of our immigrant families, City College and other students, and all the instructors for all their hard work. Please join us in the morning on Friday from 10:30 to 11:30 as well. The rest I'll submit. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Marr. Supervisor Weiner.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Colleagues, today I'm introducing legislation relating to streetlights. You may recall that over the last few years we've held several major hearings on the state of our streetlight system, showing a number of deficiencies. The system is old, it is unreliable, has huge deferred maintenance. Although PUC and PG&E have improved their response times for fixing broken lights, there's still more work to do, and the system is focused on lighting streets, not sidewalks. So the legislation I'm introducing today will establish official city policy and standards around our streetlights in a number of ways. First, the legislation will establish a uniform shared standard for levels of service for streetlight repairs, so that simple outages need to be corrected within 48 hours of being reported. Too often we hear about lengthy delays between a report of a burned out streetlight and the streetlight actually being repaired. The legislation will require that city policy be to transition our streetlight system from streetlights that light roads to streetlights that are pedestrian grade, in other words, that light our sidewalks. These streetlights are so critical to neighborhood safety and our quality of life, and it makes no sense to have lights that are lighting streets and then are blocked by trees from shedding any light on the sidewalk below them. The legislation will require that any time at least 50% of street lighting on a street is being upgraded or new street lighting is being added, an evaluation be conducted for converting the entire street to pedestrian-grade lighting. The legislation will require better integration of PG&E's streetlights into the city's 311 system and develop a requirement for more detailed reporting of completed repairs of PG&E streetlights. The legislation will also move us towards a quicker transition to LED technology and will also require better GIS tracking of our streetlight system. And then finally, the legislation makes it official city policy for the PUC to acquire PG&E's streetlights so that we have one streetlight operator instead of this split system where around half the lights are owned and maintained by PUC and half by PG&E, which is confusing, inefficient, and leads to a lot of problems. I will note that in a previous hearing, PG&E indicated publicly that it is in favor of the PUC taking over the street lights. Of course, it would be quite a process and there would be a cost involved, and we'll see how that goes. But in the long run, it needs to go in that direction, and this will make it official city policy. So colleagues, streetlights are incredibly important in our city, and they have been incredibly neglected. It's time to turn that around. We're in the recently adopted budget, we are now spending more than we had been maintaining the PUC's streetlights. We are finally going to see our streetlight system put into the 10-year capital plan, which is long overdue. And now with this legislation, we will finally have clear statutory standards and policies governing this important system. I see across the way that Supervisor Cohen would like to be added as a co-sponsor to the legislation, so thank you, Supervisor Cohen, and colleagues, the rest I submit.
Thank you, Supervisor Wiener. We will add Supervisor Cohen as a co-sponsor. Mr. President, that concludes roll call for introductions.
Thank you, colleagues. At this time, why don't we go back to item 4, Supervisor Campos.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. And colleagues, I'm not going to belabor the point. I think that we have heard a lot being said about the crisis that we're facing. And I just want to take the opportunity to thank the budget and legislative analysts, the city attorney's office, and everyone. I know that our public defender was here previously who has been helpful in putting this proposal together. What we're seeking today is based on a pretty comprehensive analysis of the need. It is not a panacea. We need all hands on deck, and part of the solution, however, requires that we make an investment to make sure that the kids that we heard from and so many others have access to legal representation. I'm simply going to ask, we have a number of people in the audience that are here for this item. Simply ask the people who are here to support the supplemental to provide legal representation to unaccompanied minors to please stand. Que se paren los que están aquí apoyando a los niños. And I know that there were many more that were here earlier. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. And with that, colleagues, I think it would be important for us as a city to send a very clear message, and I hope that we can get to as close to a unanimous vote as possible. And I want to thank the members of the Budget and Finance Committee for recommending this item, which was amended to reflect some recommendations from the budget and legislative analysts. And again, I want to thank my co-sponsors, Supervisor Avalos, Supervisor Yee, and Supervisor Marr. With that, I ask for your support. Thank you.
Thank you, colleagues. Our last item was unanimous. Can we take this item same house, same call, colleagues? Supervisor Breed. Let's take a roll call vote.
Thank you. Can I make some comments about the item too? Thank you. I just wanted to thank Supervisor Campos for bringing this appropriation forward. This issue has been, of course, heartbreaking. I watched the committee last week and the kids who came before the committee, and the concern in terms of what happens if they didn't receive the support necessary to hire a lawyer and to remain here in the U.S. with their families. And so I just wanted to thank Supervisor Campos for bringing the item forward, and I think this is a great effort, and I hope this makes a real difference, and I also hope that we can get reports on the progress. Thank you.
Colleagues, do we need a roll call vote? If we could do the same house, same call. This item is passed on the first reading. And with that, at this time, why don't we go to general public comment, Madam Clerk?
At this time, the public may comment generally for up to 2 minutes on items within the subject matter jurisdiction of the board, including the discussion between the Honorable Mayor and Board of Supervisors and items on the adoption without reference to committee calendar. Please note that public comment is not allowed on those items which have already been subject to public comment at a board committee. Pursuant to Board Rule 4.22, please direct your remarks to the board as a whole and not to individual supervisors nor to the audience. Speakers using interpretation assistance will be allowed twice the amount of time, and if you would like a document to be displayed on the overhead projector, please clearly state such and remove the document when you would like the screen to return to live coverage of the meeting.
Let's hear from our first speaker, 2 minutes.
Yes. President Chu, honored members of the Board of Supervisors, my name is Reuben Goodman. I'm a mental health consumer. I'd like to bring your attention to one of the most vulnerable populations in San Francisco, mental health consumers who are residents of assisted living facilities. Such residents have basically no protections against evictions, even if those evictions are because of retaliation, because a resident was a whistleblower, or for similar reasons. I've had the personal experience of retaliation because I was a whistleblower at Mariner House. Mariner House had violated the admissions agreement between the client and the facility. Unfortunately, the Human Rights Commission had no help to give. It didn't fit within their parameters, and neither did the tenants union. There seems to be nowhere in the city and county of San Francisco where a mental health consumer who is a resident of an assisted living facility can go when they are facing a wrongful eviction. I'd like the Board of Supervisors to consider looking at local legislation to tighten the rules and regulations regarding evictions at board and care facilities. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Thank you, Mr. President. Victims of the cabal, my name is Christopher Dahl, and I live at 6th and Howard, 14 meters and 10 blocks from sea level. And yes, Mr. President, I did say victims of the cabal. I've come to appreciate how you too are victims of the ruling elite. They let you think you are in charge. But I know and you know that you are not really the deciders. I know and you know, though you would never ever call yourself such, you are the Pinkerton class, the ones who do the dirty work for them, the grungy, the awkward, the boring jobs, all go to you. We saw an example of this last week. The Transbay Terminal upgrade came before you to rubber stamp, and you had neither the courage to stop this waste of money nor the imagination to see the need. I have observed to you that Muni will be obsolete within 15 years. The corollary of this proposition is that the human-guided taxicab will be obsolete also. This also means Caltrain and BART will be obsolete, and Samtrans and the rest. All of these will be replaced with safe, cheap, and prompt public personal transit instead of public mass transit, that is, the robot cab. Beyond the probable technology of the future, think about global warming and sea level rise. You have authorized building the largest underground swimming pool in the world, extending from 1st and Mission to 4th and King. Full melt of polar ice will raise sea level by 50 feet, 150 feet or so. Ground level at Van Essen Market is listed as being 91 feet above sea level. The building at 1 South Van Ness is 6 stories high, making the roof at about 150 feet above sea level. As you pass that intersection, look up and see the future. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thanks, next speaker.
Good afternoon, Supervisors. It is time to say no to no more domestic violence in San Francisco. From sweepers on up to the mayor, we must do our part to put an end to this problem. San Francisco has witnessed domestic violence involving former supervisor and the head of our sheriff department. When the smoke cleared, San Francisco supervisors just moved on and pretend nothing ever happened. It's quite apparent to me that domestic violence and spousal abuse are not a hot button topic issued in San Francisco unless it involves celebrities. Domestic violence and spousal abuse runs rapid in poverty-stricken neighborhoods. Domestic violence in these neighborhoods is a daily reality. This is a San Francisco problem. Unfortunately, some believe domestic violence is not a real problem. It's our society, and some can't relate to it. I hereby propose to the city of San Francisco, take the following actions. All city employees should have access to free volunteer counseling and anger management classes. Any city employee that's arrested and charged for domestic violence at home or at work should be suspended from work immediately while investing and performing a decision is rendered. Those convicted must complete a counseling prior to earning their privilege of returning their place of employment. Any residents of San Francisco Public Housing, Section 8, SRO, charged with domestic violence, cooperative with statements by witness, should be evicted from the places of residence. Stop and take a moment to reflect on the plight of the innocent victims who have feared every day, and you come to realize a victim's mind may have forgotten, but the heart never will. There are no alternatives but to take action, and that time is not now.
Good afternoon. Talk about domestic violence. This guy said. I continue with that. I would say the initial problem all arises from the native Indian, the casino, see, gambling. See, from that people are like have activities, action beyond reason in principle. See. Sometimes even the police force, I'm not talking about police, but as the chief police, but all the regular police, they have a judgment because of the vision, the way they see things is totally different from like a UC Berkeley professor like me. I'm not. I say, for example, they don't see things with good reason. So then the thinking will mess up, totally mess up, lots of bad stuff. All mixed up. So the way they handle the people, like with the duty, preventive duty, like the street, not here, but like streetwise, they will arrest people for no good reason sometimes. Not always, sometimes. But mostly they do a good job. I will support the police force. They do a good job. But I would say they have to look carefully to how to judge people, public judgment, when they try to arrest somebody or like stop somebody from action. Or somebody being given call from the Japan Center security or the Summer Venture 99 Malls of police to kick people out of the malls or somebody the usual stuff.
Contracts with.
Good afternoon, Mr. President and Supervisor Eric Marr and Supervisor John Avalos and District Supervisor David Campos, wherever he is. I wanted to inform you that today about 10:20 in front of AT&T Stadium, we filed a federal lawsuit against the San Francisco Giants. for an incident that occurred on June 23rd when they declared Native American Heritage Day, and 2 American Indians were ejected from the stadium. And the woman was hurt, her arm was fractured or severely hurt, and it was a violation of their civil rights and a violation of the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indian People, specifically Article 8. And I come here to ask you, Board of Supervisors, to be sympathetic for when on Sunday, November 23rd, the 49ers are going to be playing the Washington R word, and I'll say Redskins, but that is the R word for us. And we call on you to send a letter to the city and county of Santa Clara asking them to please refrain from using the word Redskins in their newspapers, in their radio broadcasting, and we will be there in demonstration. And I call on my district supervisor, David Campos, to put this item of institutional racism and mascots in sports on the agenda with the Board of Supervisors on September 30. I would very much appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. My name is Bonnie Kwan, and I'm here from the Asian and Pacific Islander American Health Forum, a nonprofit organization here in San Francisco dedicated to improving the health and well-being of more than 18.5 million Asian Americans, Native Hawaiians, and Pacific Islanders. I'm here in support of the resolution opposing sex-selective abortion bans. As a daughter of Korean immigrants who lacked access to health care growing up, I urge you to pass this resolution and send a message that we oppose any abortion ban that promotes negative stereotypes about the Asian American community, increases barriers to health care, and undermines health equity. This politically driven war on women has diminished women's access to safe abortions as well as contraceptives and well women care. Bills like the Prenatal Non-Discrimination Act are offered under a guise of protecting civil rights and preventing sex-selective abortion. In reality, they perpetuate anti-immigrant sentiments and subject Asian American women and other women of color to increased scrutiny by their providers. A new roadblock to women's health is not what the doctor ordered. Asian American women already tend to have lower utilization rates of oral contraceptives and in fact are less likely than non-Hispanic white women to ever have used birth control. Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander women have seen an increase in unintended pregnancy and teen pregnancy over the past decade. While anti-abortion onslaught has been seemingly endless, some lawmakers courageously offer solutions like this resolution, which call out these laws for what they truly are. We must work to improve access for the Asian American community and racial minorities to obtain equitable health care. Therefore, I'm asking you to please support this resolution. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Avni Modi, and I'm also here to support the resolution opposing sex-selective abortion bans. These bans are duly harmful in that they limit reproductive rights for women and reinforce racist stereotypes of the Asian American community. Sex-selective abortion bans are hypocritical. The idea that these laws support gender equality is a joke. The aim is, in fact, to limit women's rights and ban abortions altogether. They aim to completely take away our rights as women to choose when we should have children. Even worse, this abortion ban is using the Asian American community to perpetuate negative stereotypes, encouraging racial profiling in the doctor's office, and creating further barriers in receiving proper medical care. Our community already faces barriers because of language, immigration status, and lack of coverage. These laws create another barrier for us. These sex-selective abortion bans encourage the idea of Asian Americans as perpetual foreigners and backwards. Our community, in fact, does care about women and girls, which is why I'm standing here today, but these laws do not. Please pass the resolution opposing sex-selective abortion bans. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Maria Nakai, and I work at Forward Together, a community-based organization that works to ensure that women and families have the power and resources they need to reach their full potential. Forward Together supports this resolution opposing sex-selective abortion bans, and we ask all City Council members to vote yes today. Sex-selective abortion bans are just about banning abortion, period. They're not about gender equality, and we know this because the people behind the bans consistently vote against women's rights and equality. These bans are hypocritical, they are discriminatory, and they are hurtful to the women and families in our communities. In particular, these abortion bans exploit the Asian American community in order to further restrict access to abortion services. They perpetuate negative stereotypes about us and encourage racial profiling in the doctor's office. They perpetuate, given the many barriers that Asian and Pacific Islander women face in getting health care, from language access and translation, to affordability, to cultural competency of the provider, the last thing we need is racial profiling. It is unacceptable and it is unjust. In a city where over 30% of the population is Asian American, we need our elected officials to support us and speak out against this discrimination. Please stand with the Asian American community and all women and support this resolution. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Chelsea, and I'm here with NARA Pro-Choice California, here in support of the resolution against sex-selective abortion bans. Sex-selective abortion bans are not about gender equality. They're about banning abortion. In fact, the people behind these bans consistently vote against women's rights. In our own state, Shannon Grove, in the Assembly, the author of the ban introduced this year in May, she has even voted against coverage for maternity services and assistance to pregnant teens. Legislators on her side would outlaw all abortion, and they will use any misinformation, including that based on racial stereotype, to make this a reality. The real agenda here is banning all abortion by chipping away at access, targeting specific communities, and eroding a fundamental right for a woman to make a decision about when to become a parent. Such measures are infringing on our basic benefits health care and aim to create yet another barrier to accessing reproductive health services. I stand here with my organization as an Asian American and as a San Franciscan in support of this resolution. Thank you.
Not 40 minutes ago, David Campos told us in essence that we are to respect the CDC, the Center for Disease Control, Infowars.com. I beg of you, David, really.
Excuse me, sir, if you could please direct your comments to the full board, not to any member of the board. I would appreciate that. That is the rule in this chamber. Thank you.
Not 40 minutes ago, DC mentioned that we are to respect the Center for Disease Control by saying, in essence, that they're a trustworthy organization that wants to control disease. But I beg of you, sir, and you too, the other DC, and all of you, okay, go to Infowars.com. Okay, Jesus wants me to say this. I love to preach the Word of God, I really do, and I'm torn between one thing and the other thing, okay? But God wants me to tell you this, okay? And so please, okay, really, these people are despicable. They have the minutes released of a 2000 meeting where they all said, yeah, it's going to give the kids autism, but go ahead and blab to the public to get their vaccinations to protect them. All right, the scripture I'd like to talk about is what we touched on last week in regards to what Jesus did. It was absolutely phenomenal. Everything he did and said was a class act. He walks into the synagogue, he unrolls the scroll of the 700-year-old book, Isaiah, reads from Isaiah about how the Spirit of the Lord was upon him, sits down and said, this day is this scripture fulfilled in your ears. Okay, this is what Paul did when Paul got saved. Okay, he said Jesus appeared to him, and he saw this bright light, and he testified that the other guys that were with him saw the bright light, but they didn't hear the voice. So he couldn't prove that Jesus was Savior by their testimony because they didn't hear what Jesus said. Okay, but he proved it by going to the prophets, Isaiah, the 5 books of Moses, Malachi, and all of them, because every single book testifies something of Jesus Christ. The best is Daniel 9, because in Daniel 9...
Thank you. Next speaker.
Tom Gilberti. Just to repeat, can we get a close-up on this over here? The New Yorker, September 1st, don't shoot. If you like the article, send it off to something about getting money out of politics. I forgot that it was September 1st. A lot of people hold off to them reading the magazines for a while. Bay Bridge, the trolley, let's see, the big hole in the ground. I was kind of wondering if we were going to have some discussion about that. But let's talk about housing. Last year I said I was against changing 2,000 units into tenants in common. But what was I for? I came up with a two-part plan. One is who can change over to like winning the lottery, or if that's what it's called, and I came up with that plan overhead as I'm running out of time, but that's all right, I'll run out of time anyway. You have a ranking, and how old you are, the amount of years that you've owned your property gets you a ranking. And if you want 25 or 40 people to change every year, you start at the top, and you reward the people that have kept the fabric of our society as long as possible. And it can be passed along in inheritance so it doesn't get lost. That's kind of part one. Rewards, and part two is...
Thank you very much. Are there any other members of the public that wish to speak in general public comment? See none, general public comment is closed. Madam Clerk, could you please call our adoption calendar?
Items 15 through 18 are being considered for immediate adoption without committee reference. Board Rule 2.1.2 requires items on this portion of the agenda to be routine in nature and must be voted on unanimously on first appearance. A single member may object, remove, and refer an item to committee.
Colleagues, do we have any items we'd like to sever? Supervisor Avalos, do you want to sever item 15? Okay.
Item number 15.
I'd also like to sever item number 17. If we could take a roll call vote on item 16 and 18, please.
On items 16 and 18, Supervisor Yee.
Aye.
Yee, aye. Supervisor Avalos.
Aye.
Avalos, aye. Supervisor Breed. Breed, aye. Supervisor Campos. Campos, aye. Supervisor Chu.
Aye.
Chu, aye. Supervisor Cohen. Cohen, aye. Supervisor Farrell.
Aye.
Farrell, aye. Supervisor Kim. Kim, aye. Supervisor Marr.
Aye.
Marr, aye. Supervisor Tang.
Aye.
Tang, aye. Supervisor Wiener. Wiener, aye. There are 11 ayes.
Those resolutions are adopted. Item 15, please.
Item 15 is a resolution to recognize the 90th anniversary of San Francisco's Camp Mather, located in the Stanislaus National Forest, and commending those who helped save Camp Mather from the devastating rim fire of August 17 through August 25, 2013.
Supervisor Avalos.
Thank you, colleagues. I just have an amendment of the whole for this resolution that is honoring the work of firefighters and Rec and Park staff and I believe SFPUC staff for saving Camp Mather and making sure that Camp Mather could be staging ground for the fighting of the rim fire last August and September. So this amendment of the whole just has the full titles of all the people we're recognizing. And just for the record, I'd like to read the names of the people we were honoring. And then this resolution will be presented, if we vote in favor of it, will be presented this Saturday at the Camp Mather 90th anniversary celebration, which will be taking place at the Lake Merced Boathouse. So the 90th anniversary celebration of Camp Mather will be between 6 and 10 o'clock Saturday, September 20th at the Lake Merced Boathouse. So the names of the people we're honoring in this resolution include and are Camp Mather manager Michael Cunane, caretaker Paul Spring, assistant manager Lawrence McNesby, Stationary engineers John Ascariz and Neil Hemming, truck driver Mark Buckman, director of operations Denny Kern, superintendent of neighborhood services Bob Palacio, and recreation manager Jim Wheeler for all their work in doing fire management and helping to restore the camp. We're also honoring firefighters, Assistant Chief Tom Siragusa, Battalion Chief Brian Rubenstein, Battalion Chief John Hickey, Assistant Chief Dave Franklin, Paramedic Firefighter Ron Johansson, and Assistant Strike Team Leader Ron Preen. We're also honoring General Manager of the Public Utility Commission, Deputy General Manager Michael Carlin, and the General Manager of Rec and Park, Phil Ginsberg, for their work in helping to coordinate firefighting services during the rim fire as well. So this will be presented again this coming Saturday, September 20th, between 6 and 10 o'clock at the Lake Merced Boathouse, where we will be celebrating Camp Mather's 90th anniversary. Thank you.
Thank you, colleague. Supervisor Avalos has made a motion to do a substitute amendment. Is there a second to that? Seconded by Supervisor Campos. Without objection, we'll take those amendments. And on the underlying resolution as amended, can we do this same house, same call? Without objection, the resolution is adopted as amended. Madam Clerk, could you please call item 17?
Item 17 is a resolution affirming San Francisco's opposition to sex-selective abortion bans that perpetuate racial stereotypes.
Thank you, President Chu.
Thank you, colleagues. Let me first start by thanking the close to 24 organizations representing the Asian American community around the country, as well as reproductive justice and health organizations that have come together around this resolution. I also want to thank our co-sponsors, Supervisors Tang, Supervisor Kim, Supervisor Breed, and Supervisor Cohen. As you have heard during public comment, this is a resolution to oppose the latest assault on a woman's constitutional right to choose, which is based on very harmful racial stereotypes. Sex-selective abortion bans purport to prohibit abortions performed on the basis of sex. These are bans spreading around the country. In 2013, it was the second most proposed state abortion ban in the country, but we have not heard about it in the mainstream press. At this time, it's been proposed in 21 states, passed in 8 states, proposed in the U.S. Congress, as well as introduced earlier this year in the California State Assembly. These are bans that would criminalize doctors who perform such procedures and require doctors and nurses to report women to authorities when suspected of sex-selective abortions. The arguments by anti-choice advocates are cloaked with anti-immigrant, anti-Asian rhetoric, a suggestion that Asian Americans have abortions because they want to kill baby girls, exploiting harmful stereotypes to chip away at abortion rights. These bans would harm access by women to reproductive and health services. They would have real impact on women in the doctor's office. Women of color in 8 states can now be scrutinized in ways that other women are not. And these are bans that amount to racial profiling in the doctor's office. It's my hope today, and I know this is the hope of the coalition that has come together on this, that San Francisco would be the first jurisdiction to take a position to oppose these bans. And with that, colleagues, I ask for your support.
Thank you. Can we do this without same house, same call? Without objection? Thank you. This resolution is adopted.
And with that, Madam Clerk, could you please read the in memoriams?
Yes, Mr. President. Today's meeting will be adjourned in memory of the following individuals. On behalf of Supervisor Breed, for the late Mr. Lawrence Edward Shelton, Sr., on behalf of President Chu, for the late Mr. Alden Gilchrist.
I want to take a moment and thank our SF Gov TV crew of Jennifer Lowe and Jonathan Gomwalk, who has brought today's full board meeting to the homes throughout the city on SF Gov TV. And with that, Madam Clerk, is there any more business in front of the board?
That concludes our business for today, Mr. President.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are adjourned.